If culture is able to determine how your kid turns out, then that means that you didn't do your job, right? So you need to have the most impact on your kid's life, right? And one of those ways is to be the example that you want them to become. Like Trill was saying, one of the reasons why I went to get my doctorate degree was because I wanted to teach at the college level, but two, when I thought about quitting, I thought about my kids. I thought about, if I quit, then how can I tell my kids they need to keep pushing, right? So when they got to see me put on my regalia shit, they was like, "Oh, that's cool, Dad." So they had the opportunity to see firsthand what Dad did, right? And then number two, if a person is able to say that's not what was taught to me, then they know that there's a problem. If
Yeah.
you were to say, I'm sorry, Tan, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we also have a mentality that we want to lift each other up, right? So, yes, that's great in the household starting when you're young and parenting, and you're right, Trill, they have to be able to see examples in order to implement and mimic those same examples. But f- we have to be able and willing to help each other out, right? Maybe you didn't learn, but when you have peers and colleagues in the workplace, don't pull another black brother down. Don't pull another black sister down. When you see someone else who comes up, reach out, reach one, teach one. Be someone who's willing to mentor. It takes that. We're not, yes, we may be competing against one another, just like we're competing against everybody else, but iron sharpens iron. When you're competing against someone, the more you educate and help somebody else out, the more they're going to help you out. We've got to learn to stop feeling so inferior with each other and help each other out. The more, the most I learned, even in corporate America, is from another colleague, another black female who was successful. We would talk about any and everything. It was not taboo for us to talk about salary. It was not taboo for us to talk about investments. We weren't competing against each other. We were helping each other, talking about how can you do this? What business can you start? Shantae will tell you. I've probably invested in I don't know how many different businesses. We have to be risk takers. Without risk, there is no reward. But we've got to be able to help one another and stop feeling like we're competing. And what is it, clawing like crabs in a bucket, clawing each other down? We've got to be able to help.
And so, this is the absence of fathers in some regard. You know, uh, fathers need to be influential in most situations if they are doing what they're supposed to do. Um, as it relates to not just teaching them about finances, but teaching them structure, right? So if people have that structure, if kids have a structure, they can figure a lot of things out, right? If there's some type of template to follow. And the other thing that y'all was talking about, I think it may have been Trill and Tam, about parenting. You should definitely be more influential to your kids than culture. If culture is able to determine how your kid turns out, then that means that you didn't do your job, right? So you need to have the most impact on your kid's life, right? And one of those ways is to be the example that you want them to become. Like Trill was saying, one of the reasons why I went to get my doctorate degree was because I wanted to teach at the college level, but two, when I thought about quitting, I thought about my kids. I thought about, if I quit, then how can I tell my kids they need to keep pushing, right? So when they got to see me put on my regalia shit, they was like, "Oh, that's cool, Dad." So they had the opportunity to see firsthand what Dad did, right? And then number two, if a person is able to say that's not what was taught to me, then they know that there's a problem, right? If I say, "Well, my parent didn't teach me that," well, that means that you wasn't taught, and that means that you can go get it and learn it. And so you just made an excuse for yourself when you could just turn that problem, as Ms. Taken said, and go find the solution.
I remember here, I think it was Les Brown, I think that's his name, that had made the comment that said, a lot of times what happens is we set set the standard so low, and then the something along the lines of setting the standard so low, and then when the kids aim for that and hit it, then we kind of blame them, but it's on us by not setting higher expectations for our kids or even ourselves, for that matter. And then what begins to happen is because we have such low standards, we keep aiming for that same thing instead of somebody taking the time to say, you know what, let me just move this up a little higher. I remember being in a classroom. My background is in special education, and I remember being in a classroom, and I mean, those students' experiences in school was all, negative, majority negative. When what I started doing was actually giving them tests that the honors kids were taking, and I wouldn't tell them about it. I wouldn't even let them know that that's what it was, and I would curve it, but I wouldn't even tell them. And some of the students would take it and actually pass. And then, oh, this is hard. And then at the end, I would tell them, do you realize that you just took an honors test and you passed this test? So it's not a matter of you not being smart enough to do something. It's about the fact that you think you're not smart enough to do it. And so once we walk through that whole process, just the willingness to at least attempt to try changed, because they had a positive experience of seeing, wow, I didn't even know that this was honors. And, they looked at that a different way. So now at that point, I would say, now you have no excuse. So now my standards for my class is going to be X, Y, and Z. And I would say a lot of times they did rise to the occasion. And then, unfortunately, sometimes you're not going to win them all, but they would never be able to say that in this class that they didn't have somebody that cared about them. They didn't have somebody that didn't teach them something beyond just what they needed to know for a test. It was plenty of life learned lessons, just things like that, because those things are important. Having representation is important. So I definitely think it has to start with the mindset.
I agree. I agree. I would say even just really short. When I was in college, I remember I did a paper on. It was called the Black White Wage Wealth Gap, and essentially the numbers are obviously very lopsided because obviously in the Black families, they broke it down from single parent homes to double parent homes, and even with the double parent homes, we didn't even make enough as compared to a single family home and within a white community. We were making like probably $30,000-$40,000, much like less. And so when you combine that, I mean, obviously we're not where we need to be, but it's like when you think about it, we have people in our families that, we all have somebody in our family who did really well. They're a doctor, an engineer, lawyer, whatever the case may be. And we look to that and we're like super happy for that. And we should be. Like that's a celebratory thing, right? But when you look at other households and other cultures, that is common. It's the baseline. Like that is the simplest thing you could do. You could actually do more than become a doctor or a lawyer. You could become, specified in like neurosurgery or whatever the case may be. But we don't have examples like that in our families because when we typically, like you said, the bar is kind of low. Like granted, being a doctor is a pretty big thing, but if we could do it more, like more educators, more male doctors, more whatever the case may be within the family, I think it would actually help us to see out of the deficit mindset that we have. But currently, we're just, we're there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Don't say more male doctors because I got chewed off for a whole 2 hours because I try to promote men being doctors.
The truth is still the truth.
That's that deficit. That's that mentality.
But I would even say,
That's impossible. Really?
I would say when we were talking about like generational like mindset, my parents didn't do it or whatever. But I know one thing that I grew up with and what we pass on to our kids has definitely been the mindset of my expectation is for you to do better than me. Right. So my dad growing up, he didn't have a good education at all. But because of that experience, he knew how important education was and how his lack of a good education affected and impacted him as an adult, that he, in his mind, it was, I don't want this for my children. Right. And so the focus ended up becoming, that's why we were pulled out of our local, public high school and was put in a gifted and talented, high school. I mean, not high school, but, program. And from that, I mean, I think that that was the best thing that he could have did, because we had a great foundation in education by being a part of that. Even though we were in the hood, our home life wasn't of the hood. So we was in the hood, but we wasn't of the hood. So we were able to get a balance of being able to see what, life could be like. But at the same time, those aspirations of my parents saying they don't want this for their children, they want it better. So they made, changes for that. And then for our kids, it's the same thing. Like, no, like look up to us, look at the things that we are doing, but then take what you've learned from us and then do even better. And that's the mindset that I think as Black people in general we lack when it comes to our family and coming to other Black people. Like, we don't want to ask for help, or if we make it out the hood, we don't want to go back. We take all of our resources, all of our knowledge, everything with us, instead of coming back to teach the next one, so we can help them get out, help them aspire to be better. We get it and then we leave. And I think that's unfortunate as well.
I mean, it's dangerous though when you do try to go back, because we didn't have plenty of examples of people who tried to go back and at least be the example, if not directly help people out of it, and the neighborhood end up dragging them down. I can list a bunch of rappers just right off the top of my head, or even NFL dudes that I done seen come back to our hood and get robbed, all type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Just because he got it now and we don't, it's have not, it's haves and it's have not. So I think even if you don't come back and like directly touch the hood, I think and people get on me about this a lot, but in terms of like rappers who like be on Instagram showing their jewelry off and showing their money off and different things like that, like they catch a lot of flack for that. But I always value that type of thing, because when I was coming up in that, I'm from Port Arthur. That's where Pimp C is from. I'm not sure if y'all familiar with UGK and Pimp C and Bun B, and you know what I'm saying. So, but Pimp used to be through the hood. He used to be driving down Knife. He used to go to the barber shop, hop out, red Dickie suit, jewelry all on, and watches all type of shit, and he'll sit there and chop it up with us, give out money, all type of shit. You know what I'm saying? But that right there was everything to me, because it's like he's from here and he's driving a Bentley and got $200,000-$300,000 worth of jewelry on. So that's the example, that a lot of times those rappers or those successful people will try to set, and oftentimes it'll go bad. For Pimp, it didn't. But again, I can name multiple people. Nipsey Hussle was another rapper that I love to death, in terms of the message that he was getting across, and in terms of how how he was trying to literally uplift us. And he died right in the same spot to where he was trying to uplift us. He could have easily got that money and left the hood, and I ain't never, man, I'm out. But he tried to come back and literally build his hood up from the poverty to something of prestige, and he did. Did a hell of a job for that. Because right there on that corner of the that's one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in LA. But he turned that into a tourist site. They had people coming from Ohio and Nebraska and Wyoming come there just to get a picture. And then look what they did to him. You know what I'm saying? His own neighborhood, his own gang. That damn the neighborhood, his own gang did it to him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's the risk you run. So a lot of times it's a slippery slope with that, man. You got to have people that are willing to actually like take the intel and willing to use the intel, because a lot of times, and take the help, pardon me, because a lot of times, and this what's not spoken about enough, even we could break it down from just a regular people level, right? One of us, let's say we are from the same neighborhood, one of us go get a good job at Apple, something like that. Now we know a couple people in this group is talented enough to be there or smart enough to be there. They just may not have in the right circumstances, whatever the case may be. A lot of times, let's say I go there and I get hired on. A lot of times I'll try to come bring one of y'all with me. I'll put my job on the line, put my name on the line. Yeah, hey man, hey Tam, smart as hell, bro. Bring her in, bro. She can work. She can do this. She can do that. She can do this. She can do that. Tam, we set an interview. I say, hey Tam, hey look, they looking like they with it, man. Got the interview tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Just pull up. All you gotta do is pull up. I already put a word for you. Just don't fumble the ball. But a lot of times, Tam will show up late to said interview, or Tam won't show up to said interview, or Tam will show up to the interview and do great, get the job, and don't show up to work, or show up late to work. So now, not only is she making herself look bad, she making me look bad. Now, so when it comes time for me to get my elevations and my promotions, they gonna think about all the resources that they put into Tam based on my word, and that's gonna hinder me from elevating. So, again, you got to have people who want to be helped, and there's some talented people in the hood, and I don't just want to speak on the hood, but just in impoverished environments, there's some talented people, some smart people, but they don't have a work ethic. And if you try to go too far, overextend too much to help them, you'll drag yourself down with them. And that's a sad reality, but that's just real shit. I've seen it happen a lot. So yeah, I mean, we as a people, just as a whole, gotta do better, man. But in terms of, and again, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying about helping people, because I feel like we, us at Crew Season, we do that weekly, daily. You know what I'm saying? But
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to physically
right,
be back.
right.
You know what I'm saying? But there are avenues and other ways that you can give back to, uplift, not just uplift, but teach, and part of it is being an example. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to physically go back somewhere. It can just be the way that you carry yourself. You don't know who's watching you. You don't know who's looking at you, but carrying yourself as an upright young man or upright young woman, can make the difference too.